Here's an idea. In order to design a just society, the people designing that society should know nothing about themselves. Bear with me. Imagine that instead of running for president, someone actually ran for leader of the world, literally. And after their election, they'd oversee the construction of a just and fair society from the ground up. And let's imagine that person is you 2020. I am so excited. This is gonna be great. You're gonna do awesome. You're gonna need some campaign ads. You should probably go on tour, practice your debate skills. Oh, and you're gonna need some policies. Don't forget about that, very important. Policies. How does the world government function? What are the specific rules and distributions of power and resources that your policies. Ah, geez. Who needs a coffee break? How do you design a whole society? There are lots of possible answers, of course, but today we're gonna talk about the one suggested by philosopher John Rawls, a thought experiment / methodology that he calls the original position, found in his book, A Theory of Justice. Ideally, a just society, he says, has rules of conduct, which are mutually agreed upon and understood by all who are subject to them. Makes sense to me. I would love it if that were the case. I hope you're taking notes, by the way. Furthermore, he says the benefits and burdens of social cooperation are clearly and appropriately distributed, which is, that's a little bit more difficult. Like, who decides what clear and appropriate mean? Having one person decide doesn't seem fair. I know you just ran for Supreme Leader and you got elected, congratulations, by the way, but maybe it's better to manage things instead of, decreeing them. Totalitarianism is not rad. So Rawls says, imagine you have a committee of people. It's not just you, it's lots of folks. They will design the hypothetical and ideally just society together, but there's a big problem. They're gonna act in their own self-interest, aren't they? They're gonna develop rules which benefit them and not others. They'll screw the people or types of people they don't like and improve their position or positions they hope to achieve. The solution here, Rawls says, is a committee of people that don't know their own position. In fact, they don't know anything about themselves or history, of the world. They can have some basic facts about human biology and psychology, what kinds of things people enjoy and value and need. They can know the different kinds of people that there are and general information about science, evolution, economics, philosophy, and so on. You can even give them some various theories of justice to get them started. But while designing society, they don't know, once it begins, if they'll be the president or the postman. They don't know whether they'll be black, white, gay, straight, cis, trans, able, disabled, rich, poor. They don't know their hobbies, geographic location, or aspirations. While they're trying to design a just society, all of that information is hidden behind what Rawls termed a veil of ignorance. Rawls calls being in this state of non-knowledge about the self the original position. Rawls thought that people in the original position would design a just society because if they don't know whether they'll be a CEO, C programmer, or street sweeper, they'll make sure the street sweepers get a good deal. They design a society that doesn't screw anyone over because they might get screwed over. But okay, here's you behind your big desk, nice suit, but you're flummoxed. You can't, you're the leader of the world, but you're not a sorcerer. How do you get your committee to know literally nothing about themselves or history? The short answer is, you can't. But you can encourage them to try. The original position, as a methodology, is for helping to make decisions about how a just society may operate. One where justice is rooted in fairness and not interest. Why would you want that? Well, for Rawls, the purpose of the veil of ignorance is to isolate the moral point of view. The committee can't decide on the basis of self-interest or class interest or any interest because they should ignore those things. In the OP, they don't know what their self or class will be. So whatever they come up with must be a reflection of their moral principles about people and society. If your cabinet doesn't know, or attempts to not know, whether tomorrow they'll be rich or poor, how would they design healthcare, or the prison system, or taxation? Arguably, their policies would transcend politics and egocentrism, reflecting instead deeply held ideas about how the benefits and burdens of social cooperation should be appropriately distributed. Whatever OP committee members believe should be the case, while free of self and history, should be reflected in the society they design. And whether they like it or not, once society begins, it doesn't matter. This is about convictions, not convenience. Of course, there are criticisms of the original position too. Like, how do you decide what information the committee will have access to? Rawls says they should get some general knowledge about economics to help them design just economic systems, but do you include Karl Marx, who says capitalist systems are exploitative and therefore completely off the table? Do you include Lenin or Mao, who thought it was okay to bring about societal change through violence? Rawls says that the participants can't know their own race or gender, but do you include the writings of people who genuinely believe that certain races or genders are inferior or don't even exist? So here's you're standing in front of the society building shelf at your leader of the world library, trying to figure out what knowledge is gonna help without suggesting. Rawls says you should only include uncontroversial ideas and facts, but whoa, that's pretty subjective. Are you the lone arbiter of controversy? And even if you could find uncontroversial ideas, when it comes to justice, it's precisely the controversial ideas that make the discussion useful and important. The ignorance of history bit might also be a problem for obvious doomed to repeat it reasons. Perhaps Rawls expects the society which results from the OP committee would be so just that things like slavery, imperialism, genocide, or systematized oppression would never come about in the first place, so there's no need to know about and therefore plan for them in advance. I'm no leader of the free world, so I'm gonna leave it to you to decide, but frankly, that seems rather optimistic to me. We've talked before on Idea Channel about how systems inherit the values of their designers, and the original position, as a system, is no different. Rawls' original position designs what, for him, is a perfect person object, as much as it designs a situation where one will ideally reach a just society. The OP, being informed by money dolls, takes for granted that a lack of history or identity will be a more powerful state-crafting situation than experience and a plurality of identities. Maybe that case can be made, but not easily or non-controversially, I don't think. So, but all right, you're curious, we're gonna do all this work, picking all the right books, training all of the right people to completely forget themselves, but does it work? What kind of society do you get at the other end of this thing? Well, Rawls had some expectations. Oddly enough, he assumes that you'd arrive at one remarkably like his own late 20th century American society. Rawls speaks of rights of equality of opportunity and says that a committee would choose some amount of inequality because inequality provides an incentive to production. And he assumes the American nuclear family is a kind of natural unit which informs base social structures. The perfect society just happens to be the liberal, but not radical, democratic, family and work-based capitalist society that Rawls personally lived in. Maybe it's kind of like how so many aliens in science fiction stories end up looking vaguely human. Given the possibility for anything, it's easiest to just pull from what you know. So what do you do then? Is the problem the original position? Is it Rawls himself? Is it both? Maybe you could consult some other experts. In The Enduring Significance of John Rawls, philosopher Martha Nussbaum says that much like our own society, Rawls' results end up focusing on wealth and access to resources as the marker of who is doing well. He's concerned mainly with material justice. But there are other markers of justice. Writing in 2006, she says that gays and lesbians in our own society, while not the least well off with regard to income and wealth, are very badly off with regard to the social bases of self-respect. Nussbaum points out that Rawls understands the importance of self-respect, but doesn't end up factoring it into the just operation of a society because, hey, those people, they're able to produce and provide for themselves and others. For Rawls, the benefits and burdens of social cooperation have mostly to do with stuff. Nussbaum writes that he conceives of citizens as rough equals, benefiting from cooperation because each needs things that the others supply. I mean, there's no rule that says your OP committee will end up at that conclusion, but it does seem that stripped of history and identity, the focus of the original position will shift from who citizens are to what citizens can do. But because you're a kind, thoughtful, and benevolent leader, you'll also probably realize that your society will have all kinds of people, including those who can't produce, people who need care. Surely in your just society, their needs would be met without their caregivers being exploited. Rawls admits that this is a consideration, but says it's a secondary one. Get things running, then figure out what to do with those who can't do and the people who have to help them. Nussbaum says, nuh-uh, because the issue of care profoundly affects the entire structure of working and family life, and that no modern society has fully solved that problem, and the equality of women is frequently at stake since women do a very large portion of the caregiving. Maybe your OP committee would decide to split caregiving equally among genders, but they'd have to arrive at the realization it could end up lopsided first. So, maybe this isn't the way to go. With all OP committee members being equal, it seems impossible to account for all possible inequalities, dooming your nascent society to potential injustice from the get-go. A blank committee member may not intend injustice, but neither may they perceive accidentally designing it. So the solution may not be no perspective, an impossible ideal that we've discussed many times. It could be as many perspectives as possible and a mutual respect of their histories. Perhaps another impossible ideal, but at least one grounded in humanity. Good luck, Prez. You're gonna need it. What do y'all think? Is the original position an ideal methodology for designing a just society? Let us know in the comments, and I'll respond to some of them in next week's comment response video. There's no comment response video this week, but if you keep an eye on Braincraft, you will see me and Johansson and Diana from Physics Girl talking to Vanessa about some psychology experiments that she did. You can see me kind of like medium make a fool of myself. It was a lot of fun. It's either there right now or will be there very soon, depending upon when we upload this video. And in case you missed it, Idea Channel now also has a Patreon, so we'll put a link to that in the description and also probably somewhere else around if you want to support the show. It would be greatly appreciated. And hey, before we get too far, I also want to wish everybody a Happy New Year, and to say that I hope that your holiday season was rad and that you got to spend it with all of the people and doing exactly the things that you wanted to do, and that I hope 2017 is going to be an awesome year for you. I'm really excited about the stuff that we have in the works for Idea Channel. We have some really cool, I think, new fun things that we're kind of trying to try out. We'll see what happens, but yeah, I'm excited. I hope that's worth something. We have a Facebook, an IRC, and a subreddit, and the tweet of the week comes from Tom Noland, who points us towards a piece about John Carpenter's tweet explaining that They Live is in fact about yuppies and the overreaches of capitalism, and not, as some white supremacists seem to claim or understand, about the Jewish control of media or culture. And Tom points out that this maybe has some relationship to our older episode about Evangelion, and I would say that it actually also has a relationship to our episode about encoding and decoding, and that this is a great example of kind of like asymmetrical encoding and decoding that John Carpenter put, to some people very clear comments about capitalism in this, but that white supremacists, of course, are going to decode those messages as being about the Jewish community, unfortunately. So yeah, it's an interesting read and a very, very, let's call it 2017 situation to be in. And last but certainly not least, this week's episode would not have been possible or good without the very hard work of these kind, benevolent, and understanding Khaleesi's.